Sometimes the biggest, most interesting stories are hiding in plain sight. Like, say, in a routine annual earnings report from a huge infrastructure company. Well, today, we're going to unpack one of those reports and the massive bet on the future that it reveals. So, at first glance, this press release from Brookfield Infrastructure Partners, or BIP, looks pretty standard. I mean, this is a company that builds the physical stuff our world runs on. Think utilities, railroads, pipelines, the kinds of things that are supposed to be steady, stable, and let's be honest, kind of boring. And for good reason. Get this, for 17 straight years, they've increased the cash they pay back to their investors. 17 years. That is the definition of rock-solid, predictable performance. But if you dig into the details of that 2025 report, a totally different story starts to emerge. It's a story not about stability, but about explosive growth and a huge strategic pivot toward the single biggest tech trend on the entire planet. Okay, so first, let's just cover the basics. By all the usual metrics, the company had an absolutely fantastic year. Their main profitability number, something they call funds from operations, or FFO, hit $2.6 billion. That's a solid 10% jump from the year before, which is right on target and shows that the core business is just humming along beautifully. And hey, remember that 17-year streak of paying investors more? Well, they didn't just keep it going, they bumped up the payout by another 6%. Now that move screams confidence. You just don't give away more money unless you are absolutely positive there's a lot more of it coming through the door. So where's all this new money and confidence coming from? To really get their big bet, you first have to understand their secret sauce, the engine that actually pays for all their new adventures. It's this brilliant strategy called capital recycling. The easiest way to think about it is like a super savvy real estate investor, right? You buy a property, you fix it up, you increase its value. Then you sell it for a nice profit and use all that cash to go buy an even bigger, better property that has way more potential. BIP just does that with things like ports and pipelines. So here's how it works in 3 simple steps. Step 1, they sell off a stable, mature asset that they've owned for a while, like an electricity line in Brazil. Step 2, they cash out with a fantastic return, in this case, a 45% internal rate of return. Put simply, that is a huge profit. And then, the most important part, step 3, they take all that money and pour it directly into the next big thing. And we are not talking about chump change here. In 2025, they generated a record $3.1 billion with this strategy alone. That's a massive war chest, just sitting there, ready to be deployed into new high-growth areas. Which brings us to the big reveal. So, where is all that recycled cash going? This is where the story gets really, really exciting. So, with a super healthy core business and billions in fresh capital, what exactly is driving this next chapter of growth? Where did they decide to place their bets? We'll take a look at their earnings broken down by business type. You've got the usual suspects, right? Transport, utilities, midstream, all big, stable businesses. But then look at that fourth slice, data. It generated over $500 million. And this little slice right here tells you everything you need to know. Because here's the punchline. The data segment grew its earnings by over 50% in a single year. 50%! While all the other segments are growing in the single digits, the part of their business that builds data centers, fiber networks, and cell towers, well, it absolutely exploded. And to be clear, this was no accident. This was a deliberate strategy. As their head of global data centers said, the amount of money needed to build the physical world for AI is staggering. AI isn't just code floating in the cloud. It runs on billions of dollars of real-world hardware, and BP is building the warehouses to put it all in. And staggering is absolutely the right word. In 2025 alone, companies poured $500 billion into AI-related infrastructure. This isn't just a wave, it's a tsunami of demand, and BIP has positioned itself right in its path to catch it. And to put their scale into perspective, their data center development pipeline has the potential for 3.6 gigawatts of capacity. That is enough electricity to power millions of homes, all of it dedicated to housing the brains of the AI revolution. Okay, but any gold rush can be risky. So how is BIP making sure that this massive bet actually pays off without blowing up? Well, they have this very disciplined strategy that's built on what they call 5 guardrails. Let's just walk through them really quickly. First, they don't build speculatively. That means every single project is backed by a long-term contract before a shovel even hits the ground. Second, they focus on only the strongest customers. We're talking about the big investment-grade tech giants. Third, they build in top-tier locations that can handle any kind of job. Fourth, they use that self-funding model we just talked about to lock in great financial terms. And fifth, they match their financing to the contract length, which keeps them flexible and manages risk. So this isn't some wild gamble. It's a very calculated, de-risked plan of attack. So what does all this mean for the future? Well, the beautiful thing about the infrastructure world is that the growth is visible, sometimes years in advance. This timeline shows their project backlog. You can see almost $4 billion in Intel-related projects coming online in the back half of 2026. That's followed by a steady stream of almost $2 billion in new projects being commissioned every single year, all the way through 2028. This growth is already locked in. And the CEO, Sam Pollock, he's feeling confident. He stated very clearly that because they're so well positioned to invest in these big themes like AI, they expect to get back to their target of 10% or higher annual growth. So the quiet, stable giant is now a quiet, stable growth machine. Which leaves us with a final thought. We live in a world that feels more and more digital, almost intangible. But every click, every search, every single AI query happens somewhere in the real world, inside a physical building, powered by real electricity. So as our lives move further online, the ultimate question might just be, who is building the physical foundation that it all runs on?